I know you guys were probably expecting a review for The Hereditary, as you should, but due to some unfortunate life circumstances, I wasn't able to see it. But earlier this week, I was able to see First Reformed, so that's just gonna have to serve as the A24 retainer for now. So First Reformed is written and directed by Paul Schrader, and it stars Ethan Hawke, who plays a pastor of a local small-town church that really nobody goes to. But as the film rolls along, he gradually gets more and more morally conflicted about things regarding climate change and other eventful things that happen later on. So I've obviously been really wanting to see this movie ever since I saw the trailer for it. I mean, everything about it just speaks to me. It's an A24 film, so honestly, just with that alone, I would have went to go see it regardless. But on top of that, it also has its main focus and its themes are regarding climate change and religion, which are two things that I'm very passionate about and I spend a lot of useless time debating people on. Plus, as you can see now, it's been getting stellar reviews from film lovers and critics, so I've been extremely hyped to see this movie up to this point, and it kind of let me down a bit. I was slightly underwhelmed. But before I really start diving into some honest criticisms that I have with this film, let me just start with the things that I actually really did like about it. I guess for starters, the performances were really great. I guess mainly Ethan Hawke. He gives a very convincing performance as this pastor who is just going through so many different morally conflicting situations that are causing him to just redefine who we thought he was. And there was not really a single moment in this film that I questioned whether or not Ethan Hawke was this character. I thought he did an excellent job at embodying this character, so that's praiseworthy. Cedric the Entertainer is also oddly in this film, and he plays another preacher who is much higher on that clergy scale, and he kind of oversees Ethan Hawke's character throughout this film. And you would think with somebody like Cedric that you wouldn't be able to really shake off that comedic identity that he's just embodied and portrayed for so long. But in this film, I shook it off really quick. He did a really good job at also embodying this role, and his character was written and directed very well as well. So, you know, huge kudos to Paul Schrader there. I also really appreciate the artistic efforts that are put forth in this film. I'm not sure if I'm on board for all of those efforts, and I'll probably get into that a little bit later. But it's just impossible for me to not appreciate how unapologetically unafraid that this film was to do some unconventional things. And really the ultimate positive that I came out of this film with is that it's thought-provoking. It's very thought-provoking. It will, if you go see this with a friend of yours who also, you know, loves thought-provoking movies, you will undeniably be talking about this movie for a lengthy amount of time after you're done watching it. I watched this film with my wifey. We were both kind of underwhelmed by it in the same way, but we talked about it the entire ride home, and we still talk about it, so, you know, this film definitely exceeds on that component. It is a thought-provoking movie. I do have, you know, my own little criticisms with that as well, but overall, I can't fault the movie for trying to be thought-provoking, and it is thought-provoking. Okay, so, I'm gonna go ahead and start talking about things about this film that I found to be kind of disappointing. Firstly, I think that this film suffered from a lack of aesthetic immersion, and also just by the way its story is written and paced and structured. Like, right when the film starts, you immediately know that this is going to be a slow-paced movie, and it does end up being an extremely slow-paced movie. But that's not my issue. There's plenty of films that I really appreciate its slow-paced nature, and it's a slow burn. I usually love films that demand patience from its audience as the film slugs along. Films like A Ghost Story, You Were Never Really Here, and even a recent blockbuster, Blade Runner 2049. All of these films move pretty slow and are considered slow burns that really demand you to be patient as the film rolls along, but they all just have this enthralling, immersive aesthetic element to them that really keeps you engaged. Mainly the score and cinematography. First Reformed doesn't have a score. I mean, it technically does. There's technically a score at parts and in the third act. But overall, I mean, the film's an hour and 50 minutes. I'd say that only about 6 or 7 minutes of the film have actual score to them. And I know that there's fans out there of the film that are probably going to say, well, that was an intentional, deliberate choice from the filmmaker to really achieve a sense of realism in its character and story, which I understand that point. I don't think it's engaging, but either way, I'm not saying that a film has to have a score to be great, even though pretty much every film that I consider to be one of the best films ever made has an excellent score to it. I just felt that First Reformed could have definitely been qualitatively enhanced if it had an emotionally daunting score that was there to accompany his atmosphere and moments. And I can almost know this for a fact because in the few moments where there actually is a score, it easily was gripping me and really engaging me to what was occurring in the film. And I also wasn't the hugest fan of the cinematography in this film, despite me hearing so many amazing things about it. You know, the cinematography is good. It's not bad. But a lot of it is standstill shots. And again, I just feel like a lot of it just didn't do a very good job at keeping me immersed into what was happening. First Reformed, at least to me, I thought relied heavily on its writing in regards to plot, dialogue, and character. And I thought some of it was excellent, but I felt some of it was slightly lacking. For instance, pretty much every discussion in this movie about climate change and its place in Christianity, I thought was excellent. I thought it did a great job at really discussing the Christian interpretations that are going around in this country in regards to how they feel about climate change. And I felt like it also did a great job at pointing out the hypocrisies of Christian interpretations and how they all end up clashing together and how they kind of contradict what they actually believe. And it did a great job at doing this just through dialogue, as you see two men of faith argue about what they think is right. But I'd also be lying if I said that some of the climate change aspects of this film didn't come off as a little spoon-fed and preachy. There are a few moments in this film where I felt like I was just given a whole bunch of information about climate change. And you know, I see its purpose. You know, it definitely has its purpose in terms of our main character's realization and discovery of it, of all of it. But I just couldn't help but feel like I was being preached to about climate change in certain areas. And you know, it's not like I don't believe it, or it's not like I'm not passionate about it. I mean, it's a fucking scientific fact. But I really just don't like it when a film is just trying to push a clear message at me. Because at that point, you know, you could just do a documentary on it instead of putting it in a film, because at that point, it can easily come off as just propaganda. But overall, it really wasn't handled all that terribly. Really not even close to terribly. It's just, there was just times where it was noticeable, and I thought I'd note it. I also felt like the story, as we follow Ethan Hawke's character throughout his morally conflicting journey, felt a little disjointed and a little unfocused. You know, I'm sure that it's all intentional. I'm sure that the director, Paul Schrader, this is exactly what he was going for. But just me as an audience member just trying to take in this product, I felt like I couldn't really follow things, because it would take an idea and take a certain conflict or aspect in the story. It would bring it up for like a few seconds and then just completely like ignore it for a very long time, and then eventually come around to it. And you know, I'm patient, right? You know, films like these demand you to be patient. So I'm being patient. I'm waiting throughout a lot of it, because trust me, if you take any like normie person to watch this movie, they're gonna be fucking bored out of their minds. I'm telling you, first 5 minutes they're gonna want to check out. But I'm waiting, you know, because I know that, you know, these films, they come back to certain things and they structure their films in certain ways, in certain unconventional ways. So I'm just being patient. I'm waiting, and I feel like every time it comes back to it, it doesn't really give you that payoff that you want to get from that conflict. It kind of just brushes over it again and then moves on again, and that's just a little underwhelming. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I really wasn't a fan of Amanda Seyfried's character in this film. Nothing against her. She's a fine actress, both literally and figuratively. Just the way her character was written and handled in the film, just found kind of uncompelling. Like, there's nothing really about her character that I could latch onto or really care about. And a lot of it, I think, is just the way her character was written and directed. And you know, her character also plays a vital part in the third act, in the last moment of the movie. And let me just talk about the third act really quick. As the last minutes of the film begin to unfold, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is going to be a very powerful piece of cinema here. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what really everybody in the audience was waiting for. And it starts moving, and then it just does something, like at the very end, that I just didn't expect, and it really threw me off. It just did. It didn't really match what I thought it was going for, and for me, it didn't really even match the themes that it was going for. I guess I can interpret it. I can see what Paul Schrader was doing with that, and I can see the kind of message that he's trying to convey with this. But it just, to me, it fell a little bit flat. I don't know what else to say, but I was just uncompelled by the choice. By the last second of I'm not talking about all the third act, just the last second of the movie. I just found to be a little uncompelling, a little underwhelming. And I'm honestly surprised that the writer and director Paul Schrader decided to do that at the very end of his film. And also near the end of the second act, gearing towards the third act, there's an event involving Amanda Seyfried's character that it just seems out of place for the movie because it's very otherworldly, and everything about this movie just seems really just kind of rooted to reality. And there's this kind of like otherworldly, like supernatural kind of like psychedelic meditative kind of moment that's going on. And again, I appreciate its artistic efforts here. But I just feel like, first of all, the effects on that wasn't the best. It seemed kind of cheap. And secondly, again, even that moment kind of came off a little obviously preachy. Like I from the second that sequence started, I kind of knew where they were going to head with that. And after it was done, it's fine. Again, I can't say enough that I appreciate the artistic efforts in this film. But some of them I just don't think worked the way that he wanted it to. But apparently I'm wrong, because everybody else really, really loves this film, so I'm really probably in the minority on this. But like I said, it's a very thought-provoking film, though. I'm still talking about it. I want my cousin to watch it just so I can talk about it with him. That's one thing that this film really has going for it, is that it just sparks so much discussion after you're done watching it. It also has just excellent performances, at least from Ethan Hawke and Cedric, just great performances. The cinematography, even though I didn't find it that amazing, I thought it was decent. It's pretty good overall. And again, the themes about religion and climate change, I liked the way they were dealt, but I wasn't in love with it. The climate change thing came, at times came off a little preachy. And the religion thing I thought was handled probably better than the climate change thing, because that really dove into like just kind of the hypocrisy of religion itself. So despite me finding this film a bit aesthetically lacking and lacking in certain areas, it's still very thought-provoking, and I really, really love thought-provoking movies, so I'm going to give First Reformed a 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for hearing an unimportant guy talk about a film that most people will not see and haven't seen. If you really liked what I had to say about First Reform, please give it a like and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the Misfit Pawn channel to be updated on more film-related content.